Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what is going to be the 14th Siege analysis video inside Raid Shadow Legends. So welcome. We're going to go ahead and hop straight into it. Now, first of all, when you're watching this video, it's probably going to be towards the end of September. I am recording this on the 17th of September, so I have some videos scheduled between now and then, and I figured then is a good time to get my Siege analysis video out. So, as always, we're going to be taking a look through the board. We're going to be taking a look at my attacks. We're going to be talking about some strategies, some synergies. We're going to be talking about my defense. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about traps that you may encounter inside defensive as well as magic towers. So we're starting to see traps be utilized a little bit more inside Siege. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that as well. Now, if you're a fan of content like this, make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well as like the video so that YouTube knows to push this out to more people. And there is also a Discord linked down below, so go ahead and make sure to hop into there as well. Let's hop straight into it. So we're going to start by taking a look at the matchup. So I, of course, am in Wrath of Rohan, which is ranked number 353 in the world. And then we are going against Unobtainium. Now, I believe, make a Siege analysis video when we went against this particular clan once before. So we have fought them before. They are ranked number 140 inside the world, which is pretty cool. Now, that being said, we did actually end up losing that Siege. So it's a bit of a tight one here. So we're leading by 400 points currently. There's obviously still about 9 hours left in the Siege. It's almost 10 p.m. for me when I'm recording this, though, and I have work bright and squirrely tomorrow, so I can't stay up incredibly late to try and get that late footage. But as always, when this goes live, I'll go ahead and also post a picture on the community tab so you guys can see how it ended. Now, in terms of the defense, I only have one defensive team set, which is going to be over here in post 13, which is a rare only team. So not what I meant to move. Let's go ahead and try this again. I'm going to go ahead and move myself over here, and I'm going to walk you through the rare team that I'm using. As you can see, they have opened up the path to this particular rare team. They've opened up over here from post 17 as well as DT3, but they haven't even attacked this team once, which is quite interesting. But the team is basically Doomscreech, Tree Shield Knot, Teneko, and Beast Wrestler. Now let's go ahead and take a look at those champions in particular and see what they have on offer and why they're so good. So first of all, Tree Shield Knot, pretty obvious. He's built very, very tanky, right? So he's at 70,000 HP. He's at 3,700 on the defense. He has a 2-hero revive with some HP, a shield, and some turn meter. Then he has an AoE heal as well as increased defense, which is going to help your survivability on his own. So he is a pretty solid champion. Now, in terms of relics and all that sort of stuff, you can really just put on him whatever you want. I have him inside the Golden Elixir. It makes the most sense. If you're trying to get a rare champion tanky, you're going to need as much help doing that as you possibly can, especially considering he's pretty fast as well. So he's like 250 speed, which for PvP on a rare is pretty damn fast. So that's what he's doing now. Doomscreech is coming in inside a bolster set. Now, having a bolster set on a rare champion is sensational. This guy is coming in with 72,000 HP. So 30% of that is going to be converted into a shield for my allies. Now, I'm totally not pulling out a calculator to see how much that is specifically because I'm just way too lazy to do the math myself, but I can't even operate the calculator apparently. So hypothetically, if I were to use a calculator, I would say it would probably work out to about 21,600 as the shield that's getting put on everybody else, which is absolutely huge because obviously these are rare champions, ladies and gentlemen. So they're not going to have huge defensive stacks. They aren't going to have huge HP, right? But Doomscreech, of course, does have a very solid base HP, especially if we look at the rest of the champions inside this particular team comp. So he has the highest base HP out of all 4 of these units. And then additionally, he does also have a shield on himself, and he does also have an AoE turn meter fill as well as the big version of increased defense. So this guy is pretty fantastic. In terms of the overall stats, of course, this is where we're at. So about 226. We don't really need him fast or anything like that. We just need him placed in the bolster. Now, One of the things that really power crept Bolster was, of course, the introduction of Narcissus, because Narcissus hard counters any sort of shield sets, but that is not a concern, obviously, with rare heroes, rare champions. I've been making so much Watcher of Realms content, I'm calling them heroes now, but it is what it is. Moving on, we have Beast Wrestler. Now, Beast Wrestler is built relatively slow. He comes in with an A2 Absolute Slam, where he attacks one enemy. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. On top of that, he has a First Blood passive, where he's going to increase his damage inflicted by 50% for the first hit on each enemy. Now, this is going to be his build, so he's rocking 5100 attack, 266 on the speed, 107, and then 284 on the crit rate and crit damage. Now, I'm trying to walk a bit of a line with him because I want him fast enough to potentially cut in, but I do also want him slow enough where sometimes the enemy teams will go first, so that they can lose their Stone Skin, lose their reaction, those sorts of things. Of course, he is built inside Stone Skin himself, so not only does he get a big shield from Doomscreech, he also has Stone Skin to help him keep alive. And then additionally, he does have the Saint Xavier's Tribute. So he's going to have a 15% chance of placing a Veil on himself for one turn at the end of his turn. And then, of course, if he loses HP, it's going to increase quite dramatically. Plus, we're getting extra attack, and when we rank this up, it's going to give us accuracy and crit damage as well. So it seemed like a fantastic relic to go on him. So obviously, when he has his A2 on cooldown, he can be cycling some turns and potentially whacking people while hiding under a Veil at the end. And then finally, we have Teneko, who is a fantastic champion for PvP at a rare level, and I don't really hear people talking about her, but here's what she does. So she's set to open with her A3, so she has an AoE buff strip, right? Then also has a 75% chance of placing a decreased speed debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. She also has an AoE A2. Before attacking, she places an increased accuracy. Then she also has a 75% chance of decreasing the turn meter of all enemies by 15%. So she also has a 2x hitter on the A1. As you can see, I have her in Orb of Transfixion. So I did want to open with her A2, essentially, because this would have a chance to transfixion the enemies, but I think just having the straight up remove a random buff from everybody instead is a little bit better. So she, of course, is built to go faster. She's at 316 speed, which again isn't crazy, but for rare specific teams, this is pretty good, right? She also has 360 accuracy, which is going to be more than enough for like 95% of the teams that we're going to be facing. You know, there's way less stat bloat with, you know, rare champions, so, you know, we get a plus 40 accuracy and resistance at a 5-star awakening, as opposed to, you know, what is it, like 70 for a legendary, right? More so for mythicals as well. So that helps out a lot. Speed, she's only getting plus 7 at a 6-star awakening. Definitely going to be trying to take her to 6-star, though. She is so incredibly good. I'll probably end up doing a full guide on her at some point, but she is insanely useful on any account, certainly. And then this, I think, is by far the best relic for her. The only thing that would make it a little bit better is if I had it ranked up already for the speed. But obviously the reason it's so good is because it's just giving her an extra chance to buff steal, and she's coming in as your stripper, right? There is some alternatives that you can do, so there's like lockout rares and stuff like that. Of course, I do have a 6-star Awakened Diabolist who can turn meter boost and everything, but I wanted to make things a little bit more tricky because I always talk about how folks tend to just build 4 rares, put them in Stone Skin, and call it good. Whereas these days, you need significantly more strategy to actually get the job done, especially when you're inside late to end game PvP like we are here in this particular situation. So my team, my strategy, and my builds being talked through, let's go ahead and take a look at the offense here. So I attacked a team inside DT5. So this was the team that I went against. So obviously an Arbalest, an Embrace, a Yumiko, and a Sun Wukong. Now, I was actually, oddly enough, faster with my Crixia, which helped out a lot. So my Crixia came in, she went ahead, put their skills on cooldown, and then obviously my Sun Wukong, or rather his Sun Wukong, was completely countered by my UDK, which is kind of why I brought him. And then even if my team was not faster, I was perfectly fine with that because I obviously have the Crixia who can metamorph and reset if needed, but additionally, I also have the Embrace who can metamorph into his second form, which is going to be where you're wanting him to end up anyways. So I definitely wasn't too worried about that lockout. So that was kind of the strategy there. Additionally, I don't think there's really any way to view it right now, but this particular team was actually making use of some traps. So the trap that I had to fight against in this particular situation, actually we can see it. So Master Exploder, so placing a bomb debuff on enemies under a stone skin at the start of a battle. Very annoying. The bomb damage is based on the target's max HP. So what I did is I just ran the Marichka in there simply, right? She's bringing my Speed Aura. She's bringing a Revive if needed. She's bringing heals. She's bringing turn meter boost, everything I need. Plus, she's placing the block damage on us at the start of the turn, which is going to completely counter the Sun Wukong's A2 as well as A1. And it's also going to completely counter the Embrace, of course. So fantastic team composition to go against that particular trap. Now, I then went outside for the majority of the day. So I was volunteering, and then I also had a dinner date. And I came back, and at that point I was advised that we would want to attack DT3. So I came in here, not DT3 actually, was it MT4? I think it was Magic Tower 4. I swear I'll find where I attacked. It was Magic Tower 1, there we go. So I had 2 attacks inside Magic Tower 1. First of all, I went against White Lights, 24 million player power account. Fairly simple fight. I didn't know if I was going to be faster or not, so I simply brought in, a team that could kind of counter what they were throwing at me. So they had an Armanz. My Taurus as well as my Embrace are both inside Wand of Submission, so I wasn't too worried in the long term about the Armanz, which obviously it worked out in my favor. No rebattles needed. My Fabian was able to cut in. He's inside Stone Skin as well, so again, not really too worried about the Armanz. Most of these people won't have AI presets set up either, so your Armanzes are going to be even less of a threat. If you're curious about what I mean by that, go ahead and take a look on my channel. I have an AI preset guide that released recently, which talks about that in a little bit more detail. So that was the win there, pretty simple stuff. Now, next up, I fought against this team here. This guy was a 30 million player power, and I'm not trying to sling any shade or anything like that, but this team was significantly weaker than I expected it to be. When I saw a 30 million player power player who has a Crixia, a Siphi, a Carnage, a Volcanos, and an Ethui, and a Duchess, I was expecting a tough fight. But ladies and gentlemen, it was pretty easy. I'm not going to lie, it was pretty easy. So my Crixia came in right away, wasn't an issue, right? So she locked them all out. Now this goes back to what I was talking about in my previous Siege analysis video, which is going to be defensive threats. So there's no threat to this team. There's no threat, right? So there's multiple ways to counter this. Obviously, first and foremost, you can bring in a Marichka who places the block damage when you get the burns placed on you by the Volcanos, right? You can also bring in a Carnage, like I did, who places the block passive skills on the Volcanos. You can bring in a Crixia for a lockout. There is no threat to this particular team, right? It may be scary to look at because it's like, oh, well, Anith we can block Revive, and Carnage can lock me out, and Volcanos is super scary, and Duchess and all that stuff, right? But every single one of these champions here is also just hard countered by something like a Harima, right? Especially if you run a Harima in a Feral set, right? Or something like that. There needs to be some sort of a defensive threat. If this player threw in their, for example, their Crixia into this team, this would have been a significantly different story, right? Because especially if you have an Awakening on the Crixia, or if she can be fast and really just threaten to lock out the enemy team, that is huge. But as it stands right now, the team was pretty slow. There just wasn't really any sort of a danger to it, so my Crixia went in, locked them out, and that was that. So that was my attacks done. Those were my 3 attacks. I used all 3 this particular time. We didn't have anything too notable from what I could find for posts that we really struggled with. I did want to point out that I think it was this stage here, so post 5. There's one of the stages I was looking at on the defensive side where we were holding them pretty strong. I forget which one it was specifically though, but I seen that somebody was racking up like a bunch of defensive victories. Here was one here from Mr. Lemon, the clan leader, of course. I should have made a note which stage it was, because there was one, like I said, there was one particular post where they were really having an issue. Here it is here. So Plagued Sword held strong against 4 different attacks from 3 different players inside this faction. So his team being Siphi, Gizmak, an Awakened Rotos, and then a Fabian. Now, I talk all the time, as I just did, about defensive threats, right? And this is absolutely fantastic. So, excuse me. So, defensively, you have the Blessing, which name I forgot at the moment. The Chains, something along those lines. The Blessing that slows you down for however many buffs you're under. So that's already a good sort of threat to help your cut-in champions. We then have a Fabian with an Intimidating Presence. Fantastic, right? So already you're bringing the threat of a potential speed booster who's placing block debuffs, which means that it's going to be very hard for bomb champions to do anything. Also getting followed up by a lockout champion, right? So that is incredible. A lockout champion that cannot be CC'd, by the way. So really the only way to CC somebody like a Fabian is an Enfeeble debuff or a block active skills debuff, both of which are completely countered by Stone Skin or Feral. So those are the only things, right? Fantastic threats already. Plus then you have a Rotos, who obviously, you know, basically means that you have to run a UDK inside this team, otherwise you're just going to get clapped by this dude. The Rotos also adds a lot of a threat on his own, because again, he can't be CC'd because of the Siphi. And then on top of that, you have Gizmak, right? So we've seen them running an Ashnar to try and counter the Gizmak. And, you know, this is a 23 million player power account from Plagued Sword, going against 27 million, going against 36 million, and then going against 27 million player power accounts, right? So obviously players that should kind of know what they're doing, but they just could not get through this team, and this defense is still standing strong. So I really wanted to highlight that from Plagued Sword there. Obviously, the other teams inside this particular DT were not even touched. When it comes to the actual stronghold, I didn't really notice anything in here too crazy. There was just a couple that required some rebattles, but everything did fall pretty quickly, right? So if we take a look at some of the defenses that we have here, we're doing pretty good in terms of defensive threats. There's a lot of RNG factors in there. There's some speed boosters. There's some counterattackers, all that sort of good stuff. You know, it is what it is, right? So just make sure that you're putting in some sort of threats on the defense so that people can't just come in with super cheesy strategies and take you out really easily. Let's just kind of run through some of the other towers here and see on their side if we can find some teams that really held strong. So we have something like this by Dark Dan here. Now, obviously, this is fantastic for defensive threats as well. So you have Taurus and Marichka, already 2 super good champions that also add a lot of threats of their own. Then you have a Gizmak for the burns, which is perfect, and then you also have a Galathier for the survivability as well as CC. Absolutely sensational stuff, right? And you really are going to need a team like Mr. Lemon here used to beat this, right? Like, you're going to have some meta champions to really get through that, especially with the high awakenings on these particular champions, so that's going to be very tough stuff to deal with. On the defense, so here, this is sensational. So this team held strong against 6 different attacks. Now, what do we have for defensive threats? Well, we have Volcanos, obviously, who's coming in, placing those HP burns, allowing block revives, all that sort of good stuff. We have Embrace, who's stripping off Stone Skin, doing his, what is it, True Fears across the board, who's also immune to Lockout, who's coming in and reflecting damage on his passive on his second form, and who's doing all these things, right? Not only that, we also have a Heffrak, who's able to just absolutely slam you if you go first and then kill somebody on his team and he's not dead. But then you also have the Helicath who's coming in here with the block damage as well. So overall, it's just such an annoying team to go against, and you can really see how that RNG starts to play a factor into who can actually beat these teams, right? Look at this team here. So the Catalyst had 17 teams dumped into it. I know this guy is going to be getting some virtual high fives after this, and again, it's perfect, right? This is exactly what you want to see. You have a speed booster, intimidating presence, you have an absolutely insane mythical who can revive, who can do big damage, all that sort of stuff. You have a Marius who shuts down your mythicals, so like your Gizmax, your Embrace, all that sort of stuff. You have a Fabian who can then come in and do lockout if the enemy team is trying to buff up. Absolutely sensational stuff, right? So, again, put some RNG into your defenses. You guys will not regret it. I've made a couple of videos on my YouTube channel talking about some of the best champions for Arena offenses and defenses. And Siege, at the end of the day, is very similar to Arena, so there's a lot of overlap there. Go ahead, watch those videos, start implementing some of those champions into your Siege battles, and I guarantee it's going to help out your win rate both on offense and defense. That being said, if you guys made it this far, make sure to go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, hop into the Discord, all that good stuff. We're almost at 3,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen, and this will be the first time I announce it officially, but once we get to 3,000 subscribers, I will be launching some merch. So there's some exciting stuff for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.